Welcome to another segment of Poets in Montana. My name is Mark Gibbons. I'm the current Poet Laureate of Montana at the moment, and I just want to do this series to let you experience a lot of Montana poets and just talk with them. Most of them, or a lot of them, are good friends of mine. Today's guest, David E. Thomas, is a good friend of mine, and just to briefly sort of introduce you, give you a short introduction of Dave's story, his history. Let me just read the back of this publication, Afternoon Stroll, Dave's bio. David E. Thomas grew up on the High Line in north central Montana, graduated from the University of Montana, and then found himself on the streets of San Francisco, where he began his literary education. Economic realities drove him to work on railroad gangs, big construction projects like Libby Dam, and other labor-intensive jobs. He has traveled in the United States, Canada, Mexico, and Central and South America. He has published 5 previous books of poems: Fossil Fuel, Buck's Last Wreck, The Hellgate Wind, Waterworks Hill, and Old Power Company Road. He has poems in the anthologies The Last Best Place and Poems Across the Big Sky 1 and 2, and New Poets of the American West. And he has published poems in Romania, in Blue Collar Review, Sedia, 6, 7, and 8, and many other small magazines. His essay, Gothic Days, appeared in the Complete Montana Gothic, edited by Peter Koch, which also featured Thomas's earliest published work. Most recently, he's published poems and had an interview in Talking River Review, a chapbook, The Gosling, with Blue Horse Press, and poems in Montana Magazine, San Pedro Review, and he lives in Missoula, Montana. So Dave and I have known each other for a long time, and so I'm going to ask him probably to read a few of my favorites, but I know he's working on a new manuscript, so Dave, do you want to start off with a couple of poems?
Well, I'll go start with this one here. It kind of starts where it all began, you know. I wrote this for my friend Peter Koch on his 75th birthday. On the frontier, a plate glass window shivers and rattles, tumbleweeds and fallen leaves twist in the dust, whirling down an unpaved street. Behind the glass in dim light, a stout, lean-faced man with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers plucks type from a font case and arranges it in blocks, tightened and locked into a letterpress. He wrestles time and again, the wind howling as paper piles up, bearing the stark impression of words, words, words.
Yeah, so you get this image of some old, guy at the Frontier Press trying to get the paper out,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's how Koch started out. Was he just scavenged these old presses, and
Right. And still doing it.
Oh yeah, he's still doing it. He's got some pretty fancy machinery now, but yeah, he's still down there in Berkeley doing it, man.
Well, go ahead and give us another one, Dave. This is from the new manuscript, or?
Well, I'm going to lead off with that. I think now I've had some of these poems for quite a while, and I don't know, just what kind of reception they'll get, but I've been sitting on them for a long time. I just thought, well, I might as well sally forth and see how these things go. This is from my traveling days in Guatemala. It's called Lost in Guatemala. A black space in my heart aches to be brightened. Dark sorrows wail deep in caverns of breathless wonder. bumpy roads of Guatemala pass through Indian women of deep colors and gasoline stations that can't keep up. Are you waiting for me? I have to change some oil. Mine's thick with 1,000 years of burning blood. I need a place to call home. This morning I awoke deep in a woolen smell and thought I heard drums behind church bells.
Nice. And so that was written back in the 70s, huh?
1975,
Yeah.
February.
Yeah, it rings true today to a great extent. We haven't changed
Well,
that much, probably.
Yeah, it's, all these poems have kind of haunted me for all these years. And I was just kind of cleaning things up in my room a little bit, a rare occasion in itself, and I happened to dig this folder out that had these poems in it, and I just was looking at them, and I thought, well, I don't know, maybe these will work.
There's a book here.
Yeah, might throw them in what I got going on otherwise. He's just, it kind of progresses. Here's a little poem that I wrote quite a few years ago too, but little Tabby, the bartender there at Charlie's,
Mm-hmm.
she invited me and Tim and some other people out to East Missoula for 4th of July, and this is what I came up with, just sitting around out there with those folks. It's called Tabby's Homemade 4th. Plastic sheet jerry-rigged for shade catches afternoon thermals, billows like a black sail. Barbecue smoke mingles with firecrackers, a gunpowder tingle, tasty victuals and something called yucca juice passed around in a gallon jug. Kids splashing inflatable plastic pool. People I've never met before sitting with those I know from Charlie's bar, all celebrating the red, white, and blue on a hot, laid-back East Missoula afternoon.
All right. Yeah, and that's a timeless poem. Well, you'd think it would be a timeless poem anyway. I mean, it sure feels like it. It's a time frame, but it's also what people do. You managed to capture that personal life.
This is one I wrote for old Chuck Kinder. He was putting together, he decided to become a poet in his later years. And he put together this book called Hot Jewels. What you call a poem of poems. And he wanted me to write something for the appendix that placed him in Eddie's Club. And since I had never witnessed Kinder being in Eddie's Club, I thought, well, there's a chance to write a little fiction in the form of a poem.
There you go.
So this is also in memory of Jim Cremley and Max Crawford. Legendary glimpses in Eddie's Club. In those few minutes before sunset, when the plate glass front windows filled with lights, you could never be sure who was who. Milo might be in, or maybe Chagru. Silhouettes and shafts of sunlight congealed, sitting at tables and along the bar. The mirror behind it reflecting confusion as light gradually faded from a hot summer day. Then the last mountain dancer's handsome hillbilly countenance might emerge from the shadows and smoke as he sipped whiskey under the fluorescent tubes, gaining sway beneath the pressed tin ceiling, while seated at the bar, a long-haired kid, a refugee from Montana's desolate highlands, studied the bottles aligned below the mirror, beginning to reveal the crowd growing out of the night. Faces gnarled with angst, etched by the Great Depression, World War II, gave way to shining eyes and wide grins as the psychedelic kids swarmed the bar, defiant of authority and the war in Vietnam. A shapely redhead sidled up to the dancer, whispered in his ear, and received a knowing smile. Soon they were joined by a large blond man in a tweed coat sparkling with rhinestones. He had a comely female companion on his arm, blonde as well. They added volume to the night, the jukebox cranking out a rockin' tune. Milo or Shakuru, it was hard to tell, drifted back to the pool table and eyeballed the dope peddling outlaws clustered there. Trouble in the air, no doubt. A pool cue to the head or a busted leg in the alley, or maybe a huge laugh would billow through the room as if everyone shared the same joke and knew the punchline true. The Highline kid sitting at the bar kept his stare at the mirror and watched it all play out year after year as the light shifted from particle to wave and the silhouettes faded to dust on a breeze.
Oh, wow. I've heard you do that before.
Yeah, I did that at that Lee Nye deal up at the art museum.
Yeah. And maybe even that, or I've read it too, or something, because that's a really familiar poem. And that's never been in a book, huh?
No. Well, it's been in Kinder's book.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
The jewel of, what was it?
Hot Jewels.
Hot Jewels.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just old Chuck's foray into poetry. He wrote another book put together another book called Giant Night, which is, well, you know, that was his first foray into.
Yeah.
As he got older, he kind of written himself out, I guess, on the big long books that he.
Well,
he'd written this memoir called The Last Mountain Dancer, and that's what the reference is.
Oh, okay.
In there.
Okay. Yeah, that's. I mean, you know, it certainly seemed real to me, just based on all the stories and poems and whatnot that I've heard you read and other people tell about Eddie's or Charlie's, for that matter. And I know that the first time that I met you was at a reading in that series that Holbrook and you and Roger Dunsmore and Ed Leahy and all kind of sponsored the Garden City Reading Series, right? Yeah. And as a result of that, I think it was like, I mean, we started kind of, I mean, you were kind to me. You were generous, you know, and so we kind of started corresponding and hanging out, and so after that, I found this when I was going through stuff earlier today, and I'm going to ask you to read something too from Fossil Fuel, your first book. What some of that is what reminds me of the poems in here too. Your Guatemala poem.
Those are earlier poems in this manuscript are contemporary with that. Yeah.
Yeah. This poem I thought was you know, it was one of the ones that, besides the one that I'm most familiar with is the one for your mom, the Milk River Birthday, which I'd love to hear too. But I'd love to hear you read this So It Goes poem, which I don't think I've ever heard you read, and it's kind of just where you came from or whatnot on a personal level.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
28. Yeah.
Yeah. So it goes. Born in Havre to the tune of the Empire Builder, grew up in Chinook, listening to mad chants of empty space, long sandbox hours spread from Cherry Ridge to the Bear Paws, drumming bison hooves, incantations of past lives fused with futures of strange flesh, lost in the prairies, chasing prairie dogs across sagebrush, their tunnels hidden behind prickly pear forts. At an early age, town was too small to get lost in. Dreams of warm lust, haystacks of autumn dusk, hunting deer in clear creek brambles. I struck out from all this to seek the world of newspapers and strange cities, tracing rumors to far oceans, swimming saltwater strokes and meeting dark whores in bleak Latin streets. the refuse of centuries plying an ancient trade. We bartered flesh in rented beds, sought pleasure in the exchange of genes. We lost it all in a moment of confusion. The great silence sucked us up in a whiff of sagebrush on a cold prairie night, the Milky Way and the northern lights talking to each other across the wind.
I like that poem a lot. Spent a little bit of time on the eastern side of the divide, but not nearly as much, but that seems to really capture a whole lot of that experience for me.
Yeah, and the restlessness that it germinates in a lot of us.
Yeah, and your desire to get out there and see the world. And you want to read Milk River Birthday since you have it there? Or?
Yeah.
I think it's a couple pages is all away from that one.
There it is, last poem in the book.
Yeah.
Milk River Birthday for my mother. Frozen streams curve through stark brush. Cold blue sky sprouts a cloud or two. The sun is almost warm. A clatter of birds. 2 dogs, I can't help but run. Groves of cottonwoods stand bare along the river. Nothing rides the air. Old men melt in my blood. I pump a fresh feeling to my lungs. A wildness clears my heart. A voice speaks in the frozen river. The trees wait.
Sweet. Nice. You want me to keep thumping you with the ones I found? You want to read something that you want to launch into?
I'll just go with
Yeah, I tell you, one of the things that when I found this, when I started looking through these books for something that I thought I would ask you to read from these different volumes, but in Buck's Last Wreck, which was your first full-length, big kind of book,
Yeah.
I remember I saved this evidently. This yellowed over the top card that it says on the top for Mark Gibbons with a line under it, like it was left, and I thought that's interesting. And then it says, Mark, I'll trade you straight across book for book if somebody doesn't steal this first anyhow. I enjoyed your reading and thanks for the railroad poem, David Thomas. So this was about just right after we sort of got to know each other, I guess, was about the time this book came into being. But I thought, well, of course, the poem you just read for Kinder is a little bit of a taste of Eddie's Club, but I mean, Eddie's Club is Eddie's Club too.
Oh yeah, that poem was. I wrote that back in '87. And it was like the 20th anniversary of the Summer of Love.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided we had to have a party. And Charlie he'd only been in business a few years, so he was all for anything that would bring people in, So, Rummel was kind of in on it. You can't really say we organized it much, but Rosie Drazzy did the poster, and then later she did the graphics for the broadside that I did in this poem, and,
Right, the one that's on the wall down at Charlie D.
Yeah. And Gary Sleevey says, "You're going to write a poem." He didn't mean it as a command. He just said, "That's just what's going to happen." So I was sweating blood for about 3 days trying to write this thing. So anyhow, here we go.
Yeah.
Eddie's Club. Some nights we were all so stoned you could float a battleship. Other times it was just a couple guys so hard and mean you knew they carried the cold blue steel of the wrong side of life. As you came in the front door, a candy counter greeted you, but it gathered dust. Most traveled further along the mute but shining mirror and took their place amid the uproar. Captain Light would be holding forth about dirigibles and light show, while Shellhammer hatched a scheme that threatened to change the world. Big D and Dayshaw squared off for a gunfight that would tune up the night, and of course there'd be Jay Rummel just in from San Francisco to sing the country blues. Now Crumley, we all remember, had an office behind the cooler where he wrote dark tales that shadowed the brightly burning lights. Big-time dealers appeared in fancy cars, bought around for the house, and glided away. Vic and Satch would drift in from the res, scouting the return of the buffalo. We weaved and warped each other into a tapestry of memory. Mortar fire, napalm etched our nerves. Some recoiled, some dissented. Many died, a lot just watched on TV. But those of us who came to the bar fought our war as we saw it. We did not come to knit and sew, especially the girls. Gutowski, Eichwald, Helding, McGeehee walking tables called every bluff. And those Salish gals who loved green onions while us knuckleheads cheered the NFL. There's no end to this saga, not the bare squares on the wall, nor the wax of a used car lot. It meant something, this old saloon, a place where we lived and died and went on to other things. But what of the bartenders, the question remains. Well, they lived and died and went on to other things themselves. There's a whole dimension missing here. The railroad brakemen, the carpenters, old Charlie Hall, the retired redcap. Faces Lee Nye recognized with his camera. Betty Reynolds with her Charles Lawton face and silver screen heart called all the young long-haired bearded guys grandpa, while Adam Gardapi stole through the crowd with a hot item or two. Jeff Wright, the Fish Creek packer, observed the melee with osprey-wizened eyes, and Joe Molitor rolled his famous cigarette perched on a bar stool like a cutting horse. It was a neighborhood, Gallagher once said, playing guitar and singing songs from the Butte copper mines. Oh, we had Mutton Jeff and Captain Phil and the Dope Patrol. The payphone played a role and bad checks bounced to death. But always in the morning, the old men got up to play a quiet game of breath against sunset. And when some young drifter hauled in from Mexico, they barely tipped a nod. It was a neighborhood, this Eddie's Club, and it can't end here.
Oh, I want to applaud or do that Wayne's World thing. Oh, I'm not worthy. That's just a great poem. Yeah, it's so cinematic. It's almost like it could be a video attached to it with between Nye's photographs and like that one video thing that
Bob McConnell
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great poem. Eddie's Club, Charlie B's. Well, there's more to be read, so what else can I throw? Oh, I know what. We'll go to the next book and let me do that at you. Since you're putting up with me, putting you on the spot to read poems. Oh, and along the same lines of what the hell was it? The one that it sort of took off on another poem. This one that I found when I was looking through Hellgate Wind again. I don't recall hearing this one necessarily. Maybe I did out loud, but it's the Halloween poem in Hellgate Wind. It starts with "Behold the Mask."
Oh yeah.
That poem.
I was tripping out on that. Let's see, what page is that?
Since we just passed Halloween, page 55.
Yeah, here we go. Just for clarification, that Uncle Oat is a nickname that Sonnenberg used to have for Stoynoff. So.
Oh, okay.
Oat Willie, he called him sometimes. Anyway, Halloween poem. Behold the mask, no mere dime store figment, nor even one of Uncle Oat's vulcanized specials. This mask pulses with blood, wears its own breath with a tribal chant, veins carved in its surface by visioned hands. Behold the mask reflecting flame in the dark and frosty night. Whispers form on its painted lips, drawing forth druidic dreams. Leaves dancing their shape into soil. Smoke rising through empty eyes. Behold the mask burying its bone in a circle of feathers, drumming the raw red flesh of a heart newly sawn on a wet sticky altar. Behold the mask the assassin wears, slipping through the shadow, his razor knife to expose moonlight as bone white. Behold the mask as billions of colored dots shimmered the screen of the world. Who do you see? Your leader, your mother, father, a friend? Coyote, the trickster, the court jester, a soap-selling fool? Behold the mask on children at your door, the teeny pretense of trick-or-treat as blizzards build behind a mountain's shoulder. Behold the mask weeping its own tears, set as diamonds in the finest mahogany. Coming home now, angelic choirs sing high sweet praise, the fresh dawn of new shadows on the changing face of earth. Behold the mask.
Yeah. Was that just like a Halloween motivation thing, or did you? Where did that come from necessarily?
Oh, I don't know, probably
Yeah.
some psychedelics. Chances are good.
Behold the mask.
I don't know. I was just riffing along there, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But it was it was probably.
Around that time, probably.
Yeah, we used to put on some pretty amazing Halloween parties back in the old days. We didn't care if we got what we thought we'd get away with about anything. We usually did. Yeah.
in the outlaw life. Yeah, it's a. This guy, what did I put in here? This was the first book. Also mentioned that these books all have like really iconic covers. I think the fossil fuel. Who did the fossil fuel cover?
Oh, my old buddy Frank Dugan.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky to know some pretty good artists, and
Yeah.
and be able
Yeah,
to get some good
and
stuff.
Rummel did the Bucklass Wreck.
Well, he did the Dirk Lee did the
Oh,
cover.
that's Dirk. And yeah, Rummel's inside.
Rummel did the centerpiece there.
Yeah, that's Dirk. And then this is Dirk here too,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, Waterworks Hill. This is Dirk Lee's work. Dirk is a great local artist who has done a lot of great work and probably hasn't been acknowledged for it as much as he should be.
Yeah, I'd say.
Oh, this one I thought I would ask you to read just because it related to my own personal experience with you when we made that fated trip to Seattle at one time with a load of furniture.
Yeah.
It's on page 61. Most of your poems, they all are from your experience and with a little extra thrown in, but a lot of it comes from not only day-to-day experience, but a lot of work experiences like you mentioned in the bio. So go ahead and read that little piece just for the heck of it.
This is called Movie. In Montana, the terrain glacial defined, tectonic upthrust, earthquake quiver, full of rock and gravel when the grass is peeled away. Earthquake tremor here too, on this denuded coastal Washington hillside. The red soil soft and volcanic, mud actually, and while we offload furniture and household goods box by uphill box from this big van into a brand new house on the corner of a street of such houses, earth-moving diesel growls, big yellow machines reshape the land to accept more houses. Mount Rainier rumbles and steams unseen. Mount St. Helen only 23 years quiet. Van empty, we diesel concrete freeway curves full of fossil fuel traffic. A tide of metal, rubber, and fumes ebbing and flowing as workaday souls trace out the maze of their lives unfazed.
Yeah. I like how you move from those earth details, the ground, through the ground we walk on now in places like Seattle or Missoula or wherever,
It's all moving.
It's all moving. Yeah, it's all moving. Well, since I've got you on a roll, I'll got a couple more here, and then I'll let you take over and orchestrate the rest of the reading. But this book, Old Power Company Road, I thought the title poem was one that I'd appreciate hearing. On page 37, Old Power Company Road.
Yeah, I was just, kind of one afternoon out climbing around and just kind of remembering how things had gone for a while there. And I may have the name of that road wrong, but it could be the old phone company.
I don't think there's going to be anybody that probably can hold you to that there.
No, probably not. Old Power Company Road. Osprey rises and glides into view as I trudge this gradual incline above I-90's midday roar until I find these rocks clustered to mimic a chair and sit. Years ago, a night dark with fear and confusion, I climbed here, Clark Christensen, a steady presence at my side. I didn't know then what I was trying to outrun, but now, many deaths and years later, it doesn't matter much. The breeze has carried the Osprey further west along the river, and the clouds give way to sun a moment before dimming it again. The dark headlines of this morning's paper seem far away on this rock in the midst of Hellgate Canyon. Bunch grass sprouts bright green clumps, and many feet below, the river runs high and muddy. Small winged insects dart on the breeze. An ant has found my hand. A tick. It's time to go.
Yeah. I also think that you continue to do that walk. I mean, obviously now, as these books are getting closer and closer to where we're at now, the mention of death and other things start entering more into the poems, it seems like, because that's the reality of life at this stage of the game. But you keep cranking out poems. You still carrying your notebook and writing poems on your walks and
Yeah, it's just it's getting harder and harder to find the time to get out and do it.
yeah.
I used to not have so many little obligations, but I'm supposed to be retired.
yeah.
I'm working my ass off.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you get older, you get slower too, and it's just the way it goes.
Yeah, right.
It takes longer to do the same stuff you always done. You know?
That part-time job is now a full-time job.
It's starting to seem like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
But yeah, you know, people die on you. This new manuscript is kind of a little bit, might even be a little overloaded with elegies on.
Well, and I mean, in this next one, I mean,
Yeah,
Afternoon Stroll, I think, has got a lot. And I thought I'd ask you to read one out of here, and then I'll turn it over to you. But this is, this is a great poem, and you've read it many times before, but it's one of your elegies. It's just Ode to Dawson
Oh yeah.
on 35.
Yeah, Bill Dawson was one of the first guys I ever got to know in Missoula. And, you know, outside of the university anyway. And he was a Highliner as well, which I think will come out.
First writer guy, or just,
Yeah,
just first
yeah.
guy, period?
Well, he was the first guy I got to know in Eddie's Club. You know,
Yeah, okay.
Which, you know, Ode to Dawson. The sun rides low in the sky this time of year as we slide towards solstice and the myth of new beginnings. Always hard to contemplate the death of a friend of many years, the inescapable finality, the last notes of a casual conversation you thought might continue, but now will not. A dust-eating cowboy from Glasgow with literary ambitions, you were my introduction to a life that both elevated and frustrated. You warned me that the pursuit of letters would not be easy, but we had a lot of laughs those early days in Eddie's Club. You and Deshaw drawing down on a mark dead before he could utter a word, figuratively, of course. Violence swirled around us, the war in Vietnam, the riots in the cities. But we in the Big D Theater transcended those concerns on clouds of weed smoke, leavened by Bergie beer in the wee hours on River Road. Later you returned to the High Line following the call of responsibility many of us failed to heed. You married, had kids, worked the dirt, planting for the Greek, but never abandoned the pen, the typewriter. And while obscurity seldom lifted its dim cloak in your favor, your fingers continued to tap the keys, sealing your voice to the page, where it will remain a wolf howl across the prairie, a coyote yip in the long shadows of a short day.
Nice. I love that ending. Yeah, it's a great tribute to, you know, all the old hippies and
Yeah,
writers, livers of life.
yeah.
Well, is there anything else in the new collection that you want to share?
Oh, just see what, thumb through it, see what pops up. Well, I could read another elegy here,
Yeah, do that.
and maybe finish off with the final poem in this collection. This is I wrote this in memory of my old buddy Tom Ray. Tom and I went through a lot of stuff together, and he was a central figure in much of what went on in here in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And all.
Mm-hmm.
A man of few words. Your fist thumping my shoulder one Saturday afternoon last fall turned out to be our final contact. Perhaps you meant it that way. I had a feeling you did, but only in retrospect, once I learned of your death. We'd known each other years and years. You, a hard-scrabble kid from Tacoma, me, a college boy from a small Montana town. We met the spring of 1968, you a Navy veteran of the South China Sea, me a recent dropout from ROTC, protesting a war you knew much better than me. We grew acquainted over beers in Eddie's Club. A couple of years later, we were throwing tie butts on a railroad gang and began to know each other in the sweat and grit of workaday necessity. You'd read the ancient Hindu text, the Vedantas, in Cascade Mountain solitude, but told me once that railroad spring, Vedanta's fine, high in the mountains, but here on the railroad, gang, fuck Vedanta. I was slow to understand, as I often was, but you educated me in hard-nosed reality, and I found my ideals tested by everyday demands you'd learn to handle with aplomb. We'd meet from time to time after that railroad stint, you taking up with Ms. Riley, me roaming to San Francisco, Mexico, South America. We'd bump into each other in Eddie's club, tell our latest tale, and off we'd go again. Then Blinker lined us up with gigs in Glacier Park, where one morning as we rode to work at Lake McDonald Lodge, the rising sun catching the snow-covered peaks above the lake, you exclaimed, "Nice work, God." The rest of the day spent packing sheetrock. But Missoula called us back. We humped particle board for Bleecker and helped Charlie's Bar become a legend of wild energy. You knew contemporary literature better. You knew, better than many professors, and used your knowledge to hone your language to the bone. Your taste in music ranged eclectic but sound. A wrestling champ in high school, you followed the Seahawks and Mariners win or lose. Neither of us a mechanical whiz, but you shouldered a chainsaw and worked years in the woods while I stumbled through construction jobs and scribbled the days away. You'd always listen carefully to what I had to say and offer a fair response. You kept your own counsel, whether muscling the helm of a destroyer through a typhoon or sitting quiet with your morning beer and that final crossword puzzle you never got to finish. We spent little time together there toward the end, but I'm glad for the time we shared, old friend, and now say farewell.
Ah, that's a great portrait, man. Talk about a life. You definitely knew him.
Oh yeah, Tom Ray was an amazing cat, man.
Yeah. Nicely captured.
Well, maybe I'll read this one from my old buddy Kurt Miller, who died not too long ago, and then I'll read this last one.
Okay.
A riff for Kurt late in summer. Heat-weary leaves begin to lose their green, show yellow against the smoky air and overcast sky. I meet an old friend on the trail, out with his bicycle, amazed at the floaters on the river, though this afternoon they're few. I'm struggling with the thought your fingers will no longer zip along the frets of your guitar or squeeze notes from your saxophone as dark and smoky as today's air. But I'm glad I got to listen to you last summer at Ben Wright's, hear how your music had come together on a bright summer day when it seemed nobody should die, though by then many had. And now you've passed on and live only in the memories of all the folks you touched with your passion for playing your best notes. Wherever chance took you, the High Line or a mountain tavern or anywhere else you could find a beat.
Yeah, nice.
And this is an old Glacier Park poem, written when we were working up at a Berry Chalet, rebuilding the kitchen floor there, and we had a lot of time on our hands. And this is, so I did a lot of climbing around. View from the head wall after recent snow. To describe all this is nonsense, but the voice that is me insists These peaks, named and nameless, stretch beyond my words. Their clarity, my blood rushing against snow-crisp air, frozen water hanging from sheer rock. I climb past Cayenne and Feather Woman lakes, through the boulder field, huge chunks of time, cumulus hovering, massive and gray, pure blue sky. I climb the rock-hewn steps of Como Pass, guarded by braided yellow nylon, steel pipe rail freezing to bare hands. I emerge shouting raw mountains and bow to the four directions with boundless gratitude.
All right. That's a good one to end on, man. This has been a delight to sit here and do this with you, and you're just your voice in poetry is like no other voice, and it's certainly the most Montana voice I think I can think of. So I mean, you're the Poet Laureate in my estimation. You're the Missoula Poet Laureate, walking Poet Laureate for sure. But in the same way that we used to call Ed Leahy the de facto Poet Laureate back before they had such a title or whatever they came up with that idea. But your Montana poetry, from my point of view, being a kid that grew up in Montana and has gone through this, 70-some years of existence and experience here on this plane.
Yeah, I'm looking up the ass of 75.
Yeah, well, thank you, man, for sharing all that. And
No problem.
yeah, all right.
Always glad to have a chance to show off a little bit.
Yeah, exactly, chance to read a poem. All right, well, thanks for joining us here on this Poets in Montana, and we'll bring you someone else here shortly.
Got a lifetime filled